Thanks everyone for being here today. As we know, the proposed development at Mali Bay has created a lot of debate across the community. The Ohia Development Company is proposing a large resort, oh my goodness, is proposing a large resort project that they say will create jobs and economic growth. At the same time, several groups have raised concerns about environmental impacts, the loss of cultural and historic resources, and how the project might affect housing and healthcare needs in the community. Because of these competing priorities, the discussion has largely centered around four main issues. One, shoreline access and historic preservation. Two, environmental impacts and water resources. Three, economic growth and job creation. And four, social conditions like housing and healthcare. The goal of today's meeting is to see whether we can move beyond restating positions and work toward a recommendation that addresses these issues in a way that multiple groups can support. My role today, along with Jill Rohan, is just to facilitate the discussion so each group is heard and we focus on possible solutions. We have about 60 minutes, so I'd like us to focus on the four main issues that have come up. And we can start by briefly hearing from each organization. So please take a few minutes to introduce yourself and share what you deem the most important outcomes from this process. We'll start off with ODC, followed by HOE, and finally H4.
Hello, so I'm Paul Long, and I'll be representing the Ohia Development Company. And so I'll go ahead and give my opening statement. And so our company, we support the responsible development of the Mali Bay project because it provides an opportunity to strengthen economic stability on the island of Oahu. Also, there's a great opportunity to create jobs, large amounts of jobs, and collaborate with community partners. And so this will all gear towards the economic stability. We recognize that our proposed resort plan comes along with a lot of concerns, some of those being environmental, or they may affect some social groups or organizations. And so therefore, we are committed to addressing any of those concerns through any principled negotiations. And we just want to focus on shared interests rather than, being fixed in our positions. So firstly, we want to separate people from the problem. One of the goals is we don't want to dismiss any environmental or social concerns, but we want to work together to identify solutions so that we can balance our economic development plan, stewardship, and our community well-being. So we want to recognize that the importance of preserving Hawaii's cultural and natural resources, and acknowledge that they are legitimate concerns regarding the marshlands, the fish ponds, and as well as the shoreline access. So secondly, we want to focus, we want to move forward with the Bay development. Our interests include creating long-term economic growth, generate employment opportunities for local residents, and increase the revenue for the Kuleilani estate. And because that estate supports elderly Native Hawaiians, that's something that we want to focus on. Our proposed development would create roughly around 3,500 jobs, permanent jobs for Oahu, and around 1,700 construction jobs. So that is arguing to our point for economic development. Thirdly, we want to explore options for mutual gain. So preserving sections of the marshland and the historic fish pond areas. We want to maintain the shoreline access. So partnering with organizations such as H4 to support housing or healthcare initiatives that address homelessness and the community needs. And lastly, I'll close with this. We want to make sure we have as little of an environmental impact as possible. So we understand that water management is a major concern, and sustainable development practices. So we rely on credible data sources and professional analysis as well as stakeholder input so that we can reach agreements that are fair, transparent to everyone else, and benefits the community as a whole. So through this collaboration process, compromise, and our negotiations, we're confident that we can reach a solution for the benefit of people of Hawaii. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, Taylor, I think you're up.
All right. Hi, my name is Taylor Fujisawa. I'll be representing Hawaii's Ohana of the Environment. We as an organization are willing to be supportive of development if it is environmentally, economically, socially, and culturally conscious. The current iteration, I think we definitely can hopefully come to an agreement on all of those terms. Since the mayor has granted us the opportunity to come to a resolution with this project, I think we owe it to our community and stakeholders to kind of come to a satisfactory agreement on this project. So in the past, we at Hawaii's Ohana of the Environment have supported historic preservation efforts and conservation. We are kind of zeroing in on those elements of this proposal. Our stance is that the use of shoreline for recreation and subsistence fishing and gathering is a public right. So restricted access is not something we are interested in supporting. Another issue, as Paul mentioned, is water use. So currently, as it stands, it does seem like there's some excessive water use, which is proposing to pull millions of gallons away from local agriculture and nearby taro farms. A lot of it in part to keep golf courses green. We have seen this on other islands. We would prefer not to see it with this project. So we're willing to sort of discuss alternatives to using, some of our freshwater sources in order to, maintain the resort landscaping. So we can kind of talk about that issue. But we do feel we want to keep our water integrity so our farmers can continue to, feed our communities. We're also dedicated to conserving the marsh, and our team is not necessarily in support of the plan as it currently exists, which is currently proposing to eliminate the marshland as well as, fill in our historically and culturally significant fish ponds. I do believe that the Ohia Development Company is working on an environmental impact statement. So we would like to see, a thorough environmental impact statement so we can provide that to our board. But yeah, this current proposal does suggest that we'll be getting rid of that marshland and the fish pond. And, a big part of our organization is kind of preservation and conservation efforts. As part of that impact statement, we would also be interested in an investigation to determine whether there was a heiau on the lands. The presence of a sacred site like that would require probably further input from our stakeholders to determine next steps. But one thing that we would suggest is potentially, instead of filling in the fish ponds, to consider restoration, which would be culturally significant and also provide value to the resort property, as it is a unique and special thing about, many places in Hawaii. So that would actually end up adding value. And we could also kind of facilitate, a connection between the development company and potentially some community groups who would be willing to assist with that restoration and potential maintenance as well. So that's kind of our stance right now, again, focusing on the preservation and conservation efforts. And we are, happy to negotiate on these terms. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Taylor.
Okay,
And
could I respond to a couple of those issues?
after we
think-
get through the initial summaries, then we will go back
Okay.
and then be able
Yeah.
to kind of discuss some of the issues that have come up. So
Okay, thank
thank
you.
you. Yes, you're welcome.
Okay. Hi everyone. Let me know if you cannot hear me because my headphones are kind of weird with the microphone.
Yep,
But
I can hear you perfectly.
okay, cool. My name is Faith Butterfield, and I'm going to be representing the Hawaii Homeless Healthcare Hui, also known as H4. Our main goals is to help assist with Governor Green's goal that he mentioned during the State of the State address, where he wanted to decrease the amount of rental increases and help with finding like more permanent housing for homeless people. And so unfortunately, we believe that the goal to develop like another tourist destination outside of the main like Turtle Bay or Waikiki or Honolulu, it's unfortunately, in our opinion, we think it's going to increase it's going to cause gentrification and increase the amount. Even though it increases the amount of housing, it'll also increase the rents. And so even though it was like it would have increase the housing for the construction workers, the only way we could see that being beneficial in the long term is to have some sort of state subsidized housing to help like counteract the gentrification rising, like increasing rent prices. But that might be a little bit not obtainable at the moment. Besides that, human rights groups have opposed the resort development. Not only does it have environmental indications, but it's not assisting the homeless population really at all. And it would actually harm our plan for the Punawai Medical Respite Center expansion, because it would take up the land that we were planning. And even though the city and county has been pretty neutral so far on the project, they have been working with H4, and H4 has been backed by the governor. Like I said, it aligns with his State of the State address. So, so yeah, in the long term, we just think it would cause rent increases, which is kind of the exact opposite of what we're trying to do, and it'll cause gentrification in the town. And also, it would prevent us from being able to expand our respite center. So, yeah, that's our general opinion.
Great, thanks, Faith.
Thank
Okay.
you, everybody, for sharing. And I think like what I'm hearing from each of you, if we can just like pause for a second and think through what everyone said, is that everybody wants what's best for the people of Hawaii. And so I think if we take a step back and we just recognize that each of us is fighting for that same goal, but we each have different ways of getting to that goal, right? And we have different ways of what we think is right to get to that goal. So I just want to kind of ground us in that common space first before we move forward with, some of this discussion, because I think that we can, each of us, respect each other in terms of each of us is coming at it from the right place and from with good intentions. So let's, in that spirit, let's move forward. I know Paul had wanted to um, speak to a couple of things that were discussed. So go ahead and we'll start talking things through.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what you were, or kind of drive home the things that you're talking about, because I think as I've listened to the arguments as well, I hear three main interests from everyone. So my company, we're driving towards some form of economic stability, and I hear Taylor talking about environmental protection. And I hear Faith mentioning, about the social well-being aspect of who she represents. So I think this all kind of is under this umbrella idea of how can we all develop Malia Bay responsibly. So one of the things I would like to address with the environmental impacts, and one of the first things mentioned was some water usage. So yeah, it requires millions of gallons daily, and we can see how that could possibly harm people's local usage or the local ecosystems or agriculture. And one of the plans that we are developing is we want to reduce water intensive style landscaping. So whatever usage that is used to help develop the land, we have reduced methods in order to implement that, and we can share those methods. With the golf courses, the two golf courses that we have planned, we want to implement water recycling systems so that we're not using up any more than we have to, and then none of it really goes to waste. And so with that plan, we also want to work with the environmental experts on Oahu to help develop a sustainable water management plan so that we can move forward with those and making sure that we're responsible with the water usage without affecting anyone in the community, outside community. In regards to the preservation of, in regards to destruction of the marshlands or fish ponds, we actually want to come up with a proposal to use some of the money to start a preservation or restorative effort to portions of the marshlands so that it can still have some cultural significance, as well as we want to reconstruct the fish ponds, because I believe the fish ponds are no longer in use, but we want to have reconstruct them so that they can be used in some sort of as a historic site, or people can visit them. And so, and with that, we'll create a conservation zone within the development. And so that will be included in our plans. Would you care to respond to any of those? I have a few more, but I just wanted to give a...
So far, just a couple of points of clarity. Are there 2 golf courses or 1 golf course?
I think the development was I thought it was 2 world-class golf courses.
Okay. And then would your company be open to committing to native and indigenous plants only? Because we've had some history of people bringing in non-indigenous plants, and then they just utilize more water. So would your company be willing to commit to different things like that in your landscaping planning?
Yeah, so we're very much interested in the restoration of anything that is culturally significant. So I think that would be the priority, and then we can revisit any non-indigenous plants at a later time.
But would you be bringing in any
No,
non-indigenous plants?
no,
Okay.
that is not within our plan. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. You got more
Okay.
points?
Yes.
Oh,
And
oh,
so,
Faith, did you
Taylor,
want
did you
to
want to?
have a moment? Or
Yeah, I was gonna before we move on. Um, well, um, ODC, are your next points kind of along this thread, or do they change topic?
I was addressing Taylor's points first, and then I was going to address some of yours.
Taylor, if you
Okay,
want
okay.
to maybe
When you're done, I would like.
Quickly, and then you can take over. I just have a couple quick things.
Okay.
Thank you. Those are super thoughtful points, and I do think that my board would be satisfied with some of those things. I do also was going to bring up the point that Jill mentioned, which indigenous plants, especially those shoreline plants, they often require less water as well. So that could be another way that we could, lessen the excessive water use. Um, and then creating a conservation zone within the development, I think is a great idea. It's something that I think is mutually beneficial, because I really do believe that, visitors to the island are interested in those types of elements. So that would actually be a draw, for the development as well. So based on those two things, I think we are, we'd be very happy. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Faith. Or Paul, I guess, if you wanted to address.
Yeah, so I
thank you,
wanted to
Taylor.
address some of the concerns for the from H4 and Faith. So for we want to make sure that the homeless community is not ignored. We want them to feel ignored. We want to make sure that we're catering to any needs that they may have. And so, in regards, we don't want to view it as kicking them off the land or removing them. But what we would like to do is we'd like to either set aside a piece of land or provide some funding, so that they could have for a different site or some other uh, program. And so, we'd like to also for the medical respite center. Um, we want to, yeah, so we want to provide funding for an alternative site and also work to try and integrate any healthcare access into that development area. I think that would be mutually beneficial. And so, also, I think there was a concern about too much tourism or uh, the overdevelopment. And so, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Hawaii's main economic driver is tourism. So we would be more or less enhancing that area, and also this project will help to support thousands of local jobs, and so maybe we could work together to try and develop a program to where we can get people, homeless people, working and stable, so that and get them into some sort of housing program that we can work with and create, so that we lessen the homeless population. And so we want to commit to local hiring programs and community partnerships before anything else. And so, we want to also, create a community so that we can kind of help each other develop in that area.
Okay. I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and then I'll address your more recent points.
Okay.
But to go back just a little bit about talking about the environmental impacts. Um, one question that we have is, um, ODC recently closed down the public beach that was surrounding the bay, and that beach was accessible to the public, and it provided like bathrooms and changing rooms and showers, and it provided ways for fishing and scuba diving, and so it was a good community, um, a good pillar of the community, and it was recently closed, and it sounds like as part of this development, it'll be like further privatized. So one question we have is, are you willing to have facilities that are open to the public that are not part of, not like paying to be at the resort? Um, and then along those lines is there was an issue on these beaches with homeless encampments, which I think further proves there's a homeless population that needs to be served in this area. And so the development might end up just pushing them away rather than um, helping to improve their lives. At the same time, while like tourism is a big driver of the economy, ultimately if rents increase, the people that have like lived there for their whole lives or generations are going to be eventually pushed out of the town. Um, and it's hard to count, like I don't think there's any major city that's been able to counteract that type of like displacement. So not only like in the long term is that going to lead to more homelessness, but it's not super addressing the issue in the place where the issue is stemming from, if that makes sense.
Okay. Um, sorry, did the facilitator have any?
So this might be a good place for us to pause. We've each brought up our points and we've each kind of rebutted a little bit. So why don't we just take a 5-minute break and get a drink of water and use the restroom if you need, and then we'll come back and we'll continue our discussion.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back. I hope you had a great little break there. So when we left off, Faith had brought up concerns about beach access for the community. And so, Paul, we just want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Yes. So keeping with the social development aspect of our goals, we will make sure and we can guarantee that the public will have access to the shoreline and will have the ability to fish, as you had brought up in your concern. And then also with the growing number of those in the homeless community, we want to make sure that we kind of establish a work of a housing partnership to help with the cost of living in that area. And also, we want to help develop with your organization supporting programs that can connect these homeless individuals with job training and employment opportunities within the resort. And so that can help, and also helping to fund community development to support local housing within the area.
Okay. Awesome. So I'd like to turn now to something a little bit out of the box. And I'd like to, for each of us to give a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. And 1 is, as the project stands right now, our group is ready to go. I'm sorry. That's 10. 10 is we're ready to go. Let's do this tomorrow. And on the other side of that, on the 0 to 1, it's absolutely not over my dead body. So if we could start with Paul and just give us your rating of where you think you're at, given the current plan, where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10?
After hearing the concerns from the two organizations and being very happy with the concerns that they brought up, because these are the things that we wanted to address as well, I think we stand at about a 9, ready to move forward with the project, based off of the responses and questions that we got. Thank you.
Okay. Taylor, could you share what are your thoughts on that scale?
Yeah, so I think we, based on our conversations thus far, would probably stand at around a 5, while we do support the endeavor to, boost our economy and, like give jobs for construction and whatnot. That's not always the long-term solution. Generally, once the construction is over, so are the jobs. So we do kind of want to maybe talk about that as well a little bit more. Also, if we can ensure that some of the points which were mentioned around, right, conservation of the marshlands and restoration of the fish ponds, we do feel pretty good about that. But to Faith's point around like the shoreline access and sort of, the ensuring its use, its availability to be used by the community. We also want to make sure that that is, part of the proposal. Overall, I think there is just a little bit more on our end to potentially move the needle towards that 10. But I do think that our discussions have been pretty productive and we are generally happy with some of the things that ODC is proposing.
Okay, thank you. And Faith.
I think so far overall, I would rate our opinion about a 4. I think there is something to be said about there's a few contradictions that ODC brings up in regards to having like jobs programs next to this, resort, or having like a housing program next to this resort. Like the type of people that go to a resort don't necessarily want to be around homeless programs. And so I think the way forward is a bit of a marketing campaign. And the resort would have to be marketed as overall benefiting the community. It would have to work really hard to ease people's worries about being pushed out of their homes due to rising rent increases. It would have to be marketed as, I know we've briefly discussed water usage, like very eco-friendly, native plants. Yeah, it would be a large marketing campaign, and I don't know necessarily if that was budgeted for, or how ODC would feel about that. But certainly we would have to reassure the community and look more into the details of like where and how these these homeless programs are, especially the respite center, where and how these would be located in order to compromise on both our goals, but also reassure the community.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So it seems like we've got a little bit of work to do yet, and I appreciate the discussion so far. So I'd like to come back to Taylor and Faith and just ask you, what would it take for you to move towards a 6 or a 7 instead of the 4 and the 5 where you are at right now? So if we could start with Taylor, what are your thoughts on that? What might it take to move there?
So one thought that I have had is to potentially, if ODC would consider reducing like the footprint of the resort. So instead of the 2 golf courses, perhaps 1. If we could maybe think about a slight reduction in rooms. I don't, 3,000 rooms is quite a lot for a shoreline community to, I guess, handle. That's a lot of, toilet flushing and showers and baths and all that kind of stuff. So that can also sort of impact, water usage. That's not necessarily something that can be recycled Like the golf course, I totally get that. But, you know, if we're having all of these visitors using, you know, these water sources, um, we would be happy if that would be a consideration, just to potentially maybe lessen the amount of rooms. Um, Another thing that we would want to kind of, I guess, get further clarification on is, right, the governor is backing that respite center. So we do kind of want to find a way to make that feasible. I think Faith brings up a good point about, right, the marketing around this. And if it's a luxury resort, a lot of times I think they want to escape the reality of, right, homelessness. So potentially creating just like maybe even like a mixed use center that would also house the respite center, but like you said, maybe have some additional housing and shops or something along those lines, if that would be a potential for the development of this area as well. Which if you are maybe lessening the footprint of the resort, potentially there's more land space to accommodate something like that. Um, and yeah, and of course, keeping in mind, right, using sort of green practices, sustainable building design, and native and indigenous farm.
Okay,
Okay.
those are great ideas.
Yeah, so we are getting closer to the end of our time, and since the mayor only asked 2 organizations to move forward with a recommendation, we need to determine which 2 groups have enough overlap in their priorities to realistically develop a proposal together. So the goal is not to exclude anyone's concerns, but to identify the partnership most likely to produce a workable plan. So I'd like to kind of just summarize you know, the things that have been said here, the things that have been brought up, and see if we can identify areas of agreement. So it doesn't sound like, Taylor, that you are completely against the development, but are asking more for scaling back and compromising. Faith, it sounds like you're a little bit more hesitant. There's a lot more compromise and discussion that would need to happen in order to make you comfortable. And so there is a lot of cultural sensitive preservation and restoration you know, issues that are at hand, right, that keep coming up. Water management is a big thing, and concerns about tourism and displacement of residents. And it sounds like Ohia Development is willing to have those conversations. So is there a version of this plan that everyone could support and would be able to get behind? Go ahead.
I would say that yes, there is a version that we could get behind on our end. That would be our response.
Great. Okay. Dave?
I think Taylor's idea of a mixed use facility is really great. And especially the idea of having like a mix of like stores alongside like community resources. I think that's a great idea. Um, Again, I think it's a question of reassuring the community that they're not you know, 5 years down the line, is their rent going to double? I think that's going to be a major concern, and it's only going to increase the homeless population, especially when families might have been living here for generations and might have own or rented, and they're not going to be like able to adjust as quickly. And then I also question, is this a resort that's just gonna, again, like the 3,000 rooms, I think feels a little bit excessive for a non-touristy town. Like it's not Waikiki. Um, so yeah, I think there is a way to decrease the size of the resort and also increase the amount of like community focus and green practices so that way um, everyone's goals are met and also the community feels reassured.
That's amazing. So it sounds like we're definitely moving the needle forward as far as, seeing where compromise is on the table. So scaling back development and ensuring that culturally sensitive practices and spaces and voices are heard and kept in mind if the development were to move forward. Is that correct? Awesome.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
Paul, do you
So
think ODC is on board with that scaled, could get on board with that scaled back version?
I won't be able to speak to that now. I'd have to go back to the board and see how that impacts could potentially impact our quarterly statements because we'll be so financially invested in this. And so, what I would like to suggest is that if we could have a community advisory board with representatives from HOE and H4 and some local residents, so that we can work on transparency and open communication as to how our resort will be impacting the community. And so I think Faith wanted to see and make sure that how our resort is going to be lead the way into the future and be economically viable. And so with this advisory board, we can help show that to the community. Also, we're willing to have someone in one of our departments meet with whichever organization is necessary so that we can provide annual environmental and community impact reviews so that we can show that while we are developing it is grand in scale, we deliver on the economic promise that we set out to have. And so also we can move the respite center to an alternate location away from the resort, because it is a large piece of property and we can maintain restoration with some of the cultural sites as well.
If I could just respond real fast. I think the concern with moving the respite center to a different location is, like I mentioned before, the public beach access had a tendency for homeless encampments to pop up. And so obviously there's a homeless population here already. And presumably that's why the respite center was planned for this location in the first place. And so I think to locate it somewhere else, we would definitely have to look at possible locations. But my upfront concern would be moving somewhere where there is not a homeless population, and also moving somewhere where there's not public transportation for homeless people to reach the services that they need. And in a way that's also contributing to a level of gentrification if we're essentially like busing people out of their own community. That would be our main concerns, but we would be willing to look at possible locations and look at the data.
So so our company is willing to fund infrastructure improvements into and help transportation issues such as shuttle systems or any type of public transport. We're willing to fund those endeavors, and also we want to make sure that we have working sewage and water systems, and so that we don't put any strain on any other public utilities. So we have that as part of the plan as well.
So I think we could, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, if I could just add real quick. I guess I do like the idea of a shuttle service. I guess my concern again, it circles back to reassuring the community that is helping develop better infrastructure going to just disrupt the community for the next 5, 10 years? Like at what point do people actually benefit from having this resort in their town versus a different type of development? I think is something that we would really have to, again, like work it into the marketing campaign.
Okay, so I think we will acknowledge that no option is going to score perfectly, in all 4 issues for the different organizations. And so the goal is to find out the option that performs best overall. So again, going back to the governor's decision to choose representatives from 2 organizations, are there 2 organizations that feel that they can best work together to compromise, to find that overlap and create a program plan that would help this development to move forward?
If that applies, I feel like our vision is aligned with H4. So I would like, if that's a possibility, for us to kind of come up with sort of a proposal which we could then take to ODC and see if those types of things would work for their board. I do think HOE and H4 are aligned on sort of ensuring that there's a community centeredness and that natural resources and historical sites and community legacy, I guess, are maintained. So I'm not sure if that is an option, but I would like to throw that out there. I'd also like to say that I agree with Paul's suggestion of creating an advisory board, which would have members of our community as stakeholders who can provide a voice, as long as they are kind of meeting with frequency and then with transparency throughout this process. Thank you.
I agree. I think our concerns are very aligned. And I think ultimately it's better to have like some community resources added versus none. And so I think we would definitely be willing to come up, develop, help work on developing this proposal. But I do have concerns about a lot of the like smaller details. But again, I think that could be added into the proposal.
And so, Paul, having heard all of these concerns today and, just being able to maybe go back to the board and address these concerns, how do you feel about allowing HOE and H4 to go forward with joining the committee, to get the plan moving forward, and you could go back? Is that something that you would be willing?
I think that was part of. I think that's part of our goal in overarching, is because we want to make sure that we have input, and so this is not just for the company. That this is for everyone. So I think it's important that we have their input, and we can see where we can shift resources and our efforts to make everyone's to meet everyone's goals.
I do think if that is kind of the vision, I do feel like there is an agreement that we can come to. It does sound like overall our goals can match in the right way.
So let's go ahead and move to a vote. This has been really great discussion, and I appreciate everybody coming to the table and investing in this process. So I think let's vote on what sounds like we've kind of landed on is the potential for ODC to scale back. And we can put a percentage on it, maybe one golf course, and scale other amenities back by 10%, something like that. So, and then we're voting on moving forward with a community advisory board, which includes both H4 and HOE. And that when ODC scales back, the purpose would be in order to scale up in some of these other community focused interventions and putting more effort into the community side of things. So that's going to be kind of what we're voting on right now is, can we move forward with that reduction from the ODC side, and then with the community advisory board, and then HOE and H4 at the table. So let's go ahead and put it to a vote. Paul, can we start with you?
I vote to move forward with the initiative.
Okay.
I will go. Sorry, I interjected. Based on your remarks just now, Jill, I would also vote to move forward.
Okay.
And yeah, H4 would vote to move forward as well.
Okay. All right. So I think next steps after this is we're going to put some action steps along with these items and schedule to come back together at that time. But I appreciate everyone's willingness to move forward together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do I stop recording now, or we keep recording because we're gonna?
How much?
Can you pause?
That was about 28 minutes. I'll hear.
And I'll read them through when we. Okay, we're coming back now as ourselves again. We're done with the role play, and I would like to just pat ourselves on the back because I think we did a good job.
Yeah.
So the four main elements of principled negotiation: separate the people from the problem, focus on interests, not positions, invent options for mutual gain, insist on using objective criteria. So what are our thoughts on how we did with our conflict resolution?
I liked how
I think everyone did great.
go
Go
ahead. I liked how I think everyone was prepared enough to not have emotions get in the way, so we were able to just kind of look at the issues that needed to be addressed, and also quite a bit of compromise, so that everyone comes away with a little piece of the pie. I think was very positive and showed.
Agreed. I think everyone was able to bring up the issues, for their organizations, and again, like attacking the issue and not the person. And so even though it, like Faith was saying, that things are contradictory, and it didn't mean that Paul was contradictory or whatever, right? Like it was the theory, the big idea of something being like, how can you have a resort and a homeless camp like coexist? And that's a very real and natural thought. And so to be able to bring it up and, Paul address it in a way that, again, these are very real issues, even though this is a simulation and a case study, very real issues in Hawaii. And so being able to have those conversations and bring up hard topics and not get personal and not get emotional about sharing them or hearing them, defending them or not, I think we worked really well. And we didn't even initially, that wasn't like necessarily in there. And so just in ripping and having issues come up like off the cuff, I thought we did that really well. So.
Yeah, I think we did well at like not taking a position and just being like, my group's against this. And instead, like the team did a really good job of being like, this is what we want. Like, this is what we want to see. This is what our interests are. we're not just taking a position and we're unwilling to move. So I think that was a really big key for um, being able to negotiate, because had one of you just been like, no, we're against it, there's no movement, like that would have been really hard to get any forward movement when you come to the table just with a position and you're not willing to like discuss. So
Give or yeah.
yeah, I think that was like a critical piece.
Yeah, I think we did a good job. I'm looking at like the 4 points, and number 3, it mentions like brainstorming before deciding on the best, like before just going to the first thought. So I think we did do a good job of, like you said, Jill, like kind of combining our interests. It
Mhm.
makes me think like, I think the fact that we were just voting on joining another committee, it kind of makes me think like what would have happened if we were voting to build it right now. And I feel like if that was the case, H4 wouldn't have gone for it. So I feel like in that sense, like it made the assignment a
Yeah.
little bit easier.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
overall, I think the conversation, it was very like, um, yeah,
Respectful.
very, sorry, I'm like so tired. Um, very productive.
Like
Yep.
productive. Yeah. Yeah.
And I echo all of these same sentiments. I do like that call out, Faith. I think in this like hypothetical play space, we're like very, I think, accommodating and
Yeah.
Idealistic.
maybe more collaborative
Yeah.
than potentially, right, real life organizations, because this is kind of a high stakes type of situation.
Mhm.
But it did feel collaborative and no one was really overly selfish. It was like good communication. I also want to call out our facilitators. Thank you for sort of moving things along and kind of bringing up, points for us to sort of think about as we were sort of riffing about our position. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. This was a cool assignment.
Yeah. I agree with Faith. I think if we really had to vote on a yes, no right now, I think that would have been really tough, because
Mhm.
you have to, if we're going to compromise, not everybody can just, they don't have the authority necessarily when they're sitting at
Yes.
the table to approve the compromise. You know what I mean? So
Right.
like Paul was talking about, he has to
Going
go
back.
back to his board and see if it's even, feasible for them to make those reductions. So I think if you were in a real life scenario where you don't have the right people at the table who can approve some of these
Mhm.
compromises, that would make it really difficult as well,
Or
because
you lose a lot of
you're
voices.
like
Like
stuck.
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's either
Yeah.
hard or like a lot of
Yeah.
people like just don't get a say. So that's
Yeah.
equally bad.
Very
Yeah.
true.
So
I know in my town a few years ago they built a Wendy's and there was people out there protesting for like a year straight. So this whole conversation, that's all I could think about is like the protest and like
protesting the little
people, the
Wendy's.
community would just not, it would not
They weren't
fly. Like
having it.
that was one
Yeah.
Wendy's, the whole resort.
One Wendy's. Oh, that's cute.
Hey,
That's awesome.
well, shall we just
Okay. I think we're good.
thank you.